"You can't walk out that door, Mr. Hale." The sentence landed harder than the silence that followed it. Every head in the marble lobby turned at once. Richard Hale, CEO of Hale Meridian Logistics, froze mid-step with one polished shoe inches from the revolving glass exit. Outside, beneath the fading orange light of a Texas evening, 20 motorcycles stood in a straight line across the front drive. Their chrome reflected the city skyline like shards of cold fire. Engines idled low and steady, a deep mechanical growl that vibrated through the floor. Security guards stopped talking. Receptionists forgot to breathe. And standing nearest the door, arms folded over a black riding jacket, was the same man everyone had laughed at just 6 hours earlier. Jace Ryder slowly removed his helmet. Gray streaks cut through his dark beard. A thin scar crossed one eyebrow. His eyes were calm, but they carried the kind of certainty money could never buy. Richard tried to recover his smile. "Sir, if this is about parking, my assistant can." "It's not about parking," Jace said. "It's about respect." The room went still again. Near the back service hallway, Maya Brooks gripped a tray so tightly her knuckles whitened beneath the silver light. She had hoped no one would connect her to any of this. She had hoped the stranger she helped through the alley would disappear into the city and never return. Instead, he had come back with half the street behind him. Hours earlier, the world had looked ordinary. Maya had tied her apron strings in the employee restroom mirror at 10:12 that morning, smoothing wrinkles from a black uniform shirt she washed by hand the night before. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and fryer oil. Someone complained about tips. Someone else laughed too loud. Maya said nothing. She usually didn't. At 29, she had learned silence could be armor. She worked doubles at Meridian Tower Cafe on the ground floor of Richard Hale's headquarters. Breakfast rush, lunch rush, then private executive service upstairs when someone called out sick. It paid just enough to keep rent current on her one-bedroom apartment 12 miles away. It paid enough for her mother's prescriptions if she skipped eating out. It paid enough to survive, but never enough to rest. By noon, the tower was humming with expensive shoes, tailored suits, and voices that sounded important because they were loud. Maya moved through it all like steam through cracks. Refill the coffee. Wipe the counter. Smile when spoken to. Disappear when ignored. Then she saw him. The man came through the side entrance near the loading dock, walking with a stiff shoulder and dust on his boots. His jacket was worn leather, sun-faded at the seams. He looked out of place among mirrored walls and imported stone. One security guard stepped forward with a smirk already prepared. "Deliveries around back," he said. The man answered quietly, "Not here for a delivery." Another guard glanced at the patches on the jacket and chuckled. "Then you're definitely in the wrong building." A few nearby staff members joined the laughter, the easy kind that comes when someone else is being judged. The stranger didn't react. He only looked toward the elevators, then back to the exit, measuring something Maya couldn't see. Sweat beaded near his temple. His breathing was controlled, but shallow. Maya noticed details others missed. The slight tremor in his left hand. The way he kept checking the glass doors. The exhaustion hidden behind his steady eyes. She stepped from behind the counter with a paper cup of water. "Sir," one guard snapped, "employees stay in assigned zones." Maya ignored him. "You look overheated," she said to the stranger. "Take this." He hesitated, then accepted the cup with both hands. "Thank you, ma'am." His voice was rough, but respectful. "There's a service alley behind the kitchen," Maya added softly. "Less traffic. Cooler air." The nearest guard rolled his eyes. "Great. Now she's giving tours." Laughter again. Maya felt heat rise in her face, but kept her voice level. "Back hall, first left." The stranger held her gaze 1 second longer than expected, as if memorizing her face. Then he nodded and walked toward the kitchen corridor. No swagger, no threat, just purpose. 2 minutes later, 3 men in dark suits entered through the front doors asking security if anyone had seen a biker in a black jacket. Their voices were polite, but too polished. Security pointed toward the lobby. Found nothing. By the time they checked the loading dock, the alley was empty. Richard Hale had come downstairs just in time to hear the story. He laughed openly when told a server had helped some drifter biker slip away. "People who don't understand hierarchy always create problems," he said loud enough for Maya to hear. "Maybe next time ask before assisting strangers." The lobby laughed with him because that was easier than disagreeing. Maya lowered her eyes, and returned to work. But now, 6 hours later, those same people stood silent as 20 motorcycles blocked the sunset, and Jace Ryder took one slow step forward. He reached inside his jacket, removed a sealed manila envelope, and held it toward Maya instead of the CEO. "You were the only person in this building who treated me like a human being," he said. Richard Hale's smile finally disappeared. "Open it, Ms. Brooks," Jace said. "Then tell your boss what tonight is really about." Maya stared at the envelope as if it might burn through her hands. The heavy paper was cream-colored, thick enough to feel expensive, sealed with a black wax stamp pressed into the shape of a wolf's head. Her fingertips trembled slightly when she accepted it. Around her, the lobby lights reflected across polished marble floors and glass walls, turning every face into a pale ghost. No one moved. Even the elevator chime seemed to hold its breath. Richard Hale adjusted his tie and forced a laugh that sounded thin in the vast room. "This is ridiculous," he said. "A publicity stunt in my lobby." No one laughed with him this time. Jace Ryder kept his eyes on Maya. "Open it." His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried farther than shouting. Maya slid one finger beneath the seal and broke it carefully. The crack of wax echoed louder than it should have. Inside were photographs, folded documents, and a silver flash drive taped to the top page. She pulled out the first photo. Her stomach tightened. It showed a freight yard at night. Hale Meridian trailers stood in long rows beneath floodlights. Beside them were crates, with customs tags half removed and numbers painted over. In the corner of the image, Richard Hale himself stood shaking hands with a man whose face had been blurred by motion. Maya looked up instinctively. Richard's expression did not change, but the color had drained from his cheeks. "What is this nonsense?" he asked. Jace answered without looking at him. "Keep going." She unfolded the next page. It was a shipping manifest stamped confidential. Dates, routes, warehouse codes, emergency reroutes signed by executive authorization. The signature line carried one familiar name in sharp blue ink. Richard Hale. A whisper rolled through the employees gathered near the reception desk. Someone took a slow step back. Someone else pretended to check a phone with shaking hands. Maya had spent years in places where powerful people talked loudly and expected facts to stay quiet. She knew fear when she saw it. Richard extended one hand toward her. "Ms. Brooks, hand those documents to legal immediately." "No," Jace said. One word. Flat and certain. Richard turned toward him. "You do not tell me what happens in my building." Jace gave the faintest smile. "That is where you are mistaken." Outside, motorcycle engines rumbled in patient rhythm, not aggressive, not chaotic, just steady as a heartbeat. Through the glass doors, riders remained lined shoulder to shoulder beside their machines, hands in pockets, eyes forward. They were not there for noise. They were there to witness. Maya looked at the flash drive next. "What is on this?" she asked quietly. "Security footage," Jace said. 3 years of it. The room seemed to tilt. Richard's polished confidence cracked for the first time. "This man is extorting us," he snapped, voice rising. "Call the police." One security guard near the front desk did not move. Another stared at the floor. Jace noticed. "Go ahead," he said. "Tell them to bring detectives, not patrol cars." Richard's jaw tightened. Maya remembered the afternoon. The guards laughing at the dusty stranger. Richard calling hierarchy natural law. The casual way humiliation had filled the room like perfume. Now silence had replaced it. She removed another photograph. This. One showed a driver in a Hale Meridian jacket kneeling beside a disabled truck on a desert road while another convoy passed him by. On the back, written in black marker, were 4 words. "Left their TO fail." Jace saw her reading it. "That was my brother," he said. The hardness in his face shifted for a moment into something older and heavier. He worked 18 years for this company. Perfect record. Then he asked questions about rerouted cargo and missing loads. 2 weeks later, he was fired. 1 month later, he disappeared. No one interrupted. Even Richard did not speak. Jace continued. "I came here today to ask for a meeting. Quietly. I wanted answers before I made this public." He glanced around the room. "Instead, I was laughed at in the lobby." Maya lowered her eyes. Shame touched her because she had not done more, though she had done the only thing she could. A cup of water. A hallway. A small kindness. Jace looked back at her. Except one person remembered what dignity looks like. Richard scoffed, but the sound lacked strength. You expect anyone to believe a biker gang over a Fortune 500 company. Maya turned the next page. It was a bank transfer summary with shell corporations linked by arrows and dates. Amounts climbed into millions. Even she understood enough to know it was not normal. Richard took one step backward. This material is stolen. Recovered, Jace corrected. From people your company forgot were watching. The receptionist nearest the desk quietly removed her company badge and set it on the counter. The tiny click drew every eye. Then an older janitor near the elevators did the same. One by one, 3 more employees followed. Richard stared at them in disbelief. Have you all lost your minds? Maya met his gaze for the first time that day without lowering hers. No, sir, she said softly. Some people are just done pretending. The air changed. It was subtle, like the first cool breeze before rain. Richard felt it too. He looked suddenly smaller inside his tailored suit. Jace nodded toward the flash drive in Maya's hand. Take that to Channel 8 News. They are waiting across the street. Gasps rose near the glass wall. Reporters? Maya looked outside. Beyond the row of motorcycles, 2 news vans sat with satellite dishes raised into the darkening sky. Their lights were already on. Richard's lips parted. You planned this. Jace shook his head. No, I planned to ask politely. He glanced once at Maya. Then I learned what kind of man you really were. Richard stepped toward her quickly, stopping himself just short of desperation. Ms. Brooks, think carefully. You work here. Your future depends on this company. Maya felt the flash drive warm in her palm. Rent, bills, her mother's medicine. Every fear lined up in her chest like dominoes. Then she remembered how easy it had been for them to laugh at someone thirsty and tired. She remembered how cheap cruelty always sounded. She lifted her chin. Maybe my future depends on leaving. And with that, the front doors unlocked automatically with a soft mechanical click. The soft click of the unlocking doors sounded louder than thunder. Every eye in the lobby followed Maya Brooks as she stepped toward the glass entrance with the flash drive in one hand and the envelope tucked beneath her arm. Outside, evening wind moved across the line of motorcycles, carrying the scent of rain and warm pavement. Red brake lights glowed like embers in the deepening dusk. Across the street, 2 Channel 8 news vans waited with cameras pointed toward Meridian Tower. Their generators hummed beneath the city noise. Richard Hale moved fast enough to show fear for the first time in years. Stop her, he barked. No one moved. Security guards who had once rushed to open doors for him now stood still, hands clasped in front of them, eyes carefully neutral. The older guard nearest the desk cleared his throat. Sir, she is free to leave. Richard turned sharply. You work for me. The guard met his gaze only briefly. I work for a paycheck. The sentence landed with the dull weight of truth. Maya kept walking. Each step across the marble floor sounded crisp and measured. She expected her knees to shake, but they did not. Strange how courage often arrived after humiliation had already done its worst. She reached the door and paused only once. Behind her, the lobby lights reflected off polished stone and expensive glass, making the room look grander than it felt. In front of her, the night air waited honest and cool. Jace Ryder stepped aside and opened the door himself. Ma'am, he said quietly. No performance. No smirk. Just respect. She nodded and stepped outside. Camera lights snapped on at once. A reporter in a navy coat hurried forward, microphone raised. Ms. Brooks, are you an employee of Hale Meridian? Is it true you have evidence of criminal misconduct? Maya blinked against the sudden brightness. She had spent years learning how to be invisible. Now half the city seemed to be staring at her. Jace leaned close enough for only her to hear. Tell the truth. Nothing more. She steadied her breath. I am an employee, she said, and I have materials that should be reviewed by investigators and the press. The reporter's eyes widened. Did the company retaliate against workers? Maya thought of the janitor placing down his badge. The receptionist silently stepping away. Drivers and photographs abandoned on roads. People used until they became inconvenient. You should ask the people inside, she answered. Behind the glass doors, employees were already gathering near the windows, watching like people who had just heard a crack in a dam. Richard Hale appeared in the lobby behind them, shouting orders no one obeyed. His mouth moved. His hands sliced the air, but the glass muted him into pantomime. Power looked smaller when sound could not reach anyone. Jace turned to one of the riders, a woman with silver braids beneath her helmet. Call Sam. She nodded and stepped aside with her phone. Maya glanced at him. Who is Sam? Federal investigator, Jace said. Retired last year. Came back when he saw the files. Maya looked down at the flash drive again. You trusted me with this after knowing me 10 seconds? Jace shook his head. I trusted the woman who gave water to a stranger everyone else mocked. The words hit deeper than praise. They recognized something she had nearly forgotten in herself. The reporter pressed again. Ms. Brooks, why did you help him earlier today? Maya almost laughed at how simple the answer was compared to the chaos around them. Because he looked tired. A murmur passed through the small crowd. Jace smiled faintly. There it is. What? She asked. The thing rich men never understand. Most revolutions begin with something small. Across the plaza, police cruisers rolled to the curb with lights flashing blue against the tower windows. Officers stepped out quickly, scanning the motorcycles, the cameras, the crowd. Their hands stayed low when they saw the riders standing peacefully beside parked bikes. A lieutenant approached first. Who is in charge here? Jace pointed to Maya. The lieutenant frowned. Sir, I am serious. So am I, Jace replied. She is the reason anyone is standing here tonight. The lieutenant turned to Maya, confused but attentive. Ma'am, do you possess evidence connected to allegations against this company? Maya swallowed once. Yes. Then I need you to come with me. Richard Hale burst through the lobby doors at last, tie loosened, face pale beneath the plaza lights. Officer, that property belongs to my corporation. The lieutenant did not even look at him. Then you can discuss chain of custody downtown. Reporters surged forward. Questions flew like hail. Richard raised both hands, trying to command the moment the way he commanded boardrooms. These claims are fabricated by disgruntled extremists. The silver-braided rider laughed softly. Another rider lifted a phone and played audio through a portable speaker. Richard's own voice filled the plaza, clear and unmistakable. People who do not understand hierarchy always create problems. The recording had been taken that afternoon in the lobby. Gasps rose. Cameras pivoted instantly. Richard froze. One careless sentence, spoken when he thought only lesser people were listening, now hung over him like smoke. Maya stared. How did you get that? Jace tapped his ear. Many people hear more than they are supposed to. The lieutenant straightened. Mr. Hale, I advise you to remain available. Richard looked suddenly old, as if the night had added 10 years in 10 minutes. He turned toward Maya with something close to pleading. You do not know what you are doing. She met his eyes calmly. No, sir. I know exactly what I am doing for the first time in a long while. A black sedan pulled up beside the curb. An older man stepped out carrying a worn leather briefcase and a federal badge clipped inside his coat. Sam. He walked directly to Maya, not Richard, not the cameras, not the riders. Ms. Brooks, he said, voice steady as gravel. I hear you have something important. She placed the flash drive in his hand. The plaza fell silent again. Sam looked at the label, then up at Meridian Tower, its top floors glowing gold against the dark sky. Good, he said quietly. Because by sunrise, this building is going to tell the truth. By 6:40 the next morning, Meridian Tower no longer looked untouchable. News vans lined the curb from corner to corner. Satellite dishes pointed into a pale gray sky. Coffee carts did brisk business with camera crews wrapped in jackets against the cool morning wind. Across the giant glass facade, the company logo reflected sunrise in broken bands of gold. It looked elegant from a distance and fragile up close. Maya Brooks stood half a block away holding a paper cup that had already gone cold. She had not slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the plaza lights, Richard Hale's face draining of color, the federal badge in Sam's hand. Beside her, Jace Ryder leaned against his motorcycle with quiet patience. He looked less like a threat in daylight, and more like a man who had spent years carrying weight no one else would lift. You should sit down, he said. Maya shook her head. If I sit, I might start shaking. He gave a short nod. Fair enough. Federal agents entered the building in pairs just after dawn. No sirens. No drama. Dark coats, clipped steps, sealed cases in hand. The kind of calm that frightened executives more than noise ever could. Employees arriving for work slowed at the sight, badges hanging uselessly from trembling fingers. Some turned around and left. Some stared upward, as if the building itself might explain what was happening. Others walked inside with the look of people who already knew. A reporter spotted Maya near the curb and hurried over. Ms. Brooks, can you confirm whether arrests are expected? Maya kept her eyes on the tower. I cannot confirm anything. Do you regret speaking out? The reporter asked. She thought of years spent apologizing for taking up space, for asking questions, for needing fair treatment, for existing too visibly in rooms designed to ignore her. No, she said. I regret waiting so long to trust myself. The reporter lowered the microphone slightly. Even professionals recognize truth when they heard it. Jace glanced at her. You sound different today. Do I? Yes, he said, like someone who stopped asking permission. On the 31st floor, blinds were half drawn in Richard Hale's executive office. His silhouette moved behind the glass like a trapped shadow. Through lobby screens broadcasting live financial news, stock numbers crawled red beneath the company name. Analysts used phrases such as instability, executive scrutiny, emergency board review. Numbers fell faster than anyone on camera could speak. By 7:15, social media had done what investigations alone never could. The old audio clips spread everywhere. Richard's voice repeating, cold and careless. People who do not understand hierarchy always create problems. The sentence had become a headline, a meme, a symbol, and a confession. Workers across the country posted their own stories beneath it. Missed wages, unsafe loads, threats after complaints, drivers stranded in storms, single mothers denied leave, warehouse staff ignored after injuries. Each story was small by itself. Together, they became a flood. Sam exited the building briefly and crossed toward Maya. He carried a legal pad thick with notes. You were right to bring it forward, he said. The drive opened doors. Maya searched his face. How bad is it? Sam looked back at the tower. Worse than expected. Better documented than I hoped. He lowered his voice. There are records of hidden subsidiaries, manipulated inspections, payroll fraud, and retaliatory dismissals. Enough for civil charges at minimum. Possibly criminal. Maya exhaled slowly. The morning air felt sharper now. What happens next? Depends who starts telling the truth first. As if summoned by the sentence, a side entrance opened. 3 senior executives emerged carrying boxes of personal items. Framed certificates, desk plants, family photos. Their eyes stayed down as cameras flashed. One man paused when he saw Maya. Recognition crossed his face. He had laughed in the lobby yesterday. Now his shoulders rounded under the weight of cardboard and consequence. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it and kept walking. Jace watched him go. Funny thing about towers, he said. People think they stand forever. What do they really stand on? Maya asked. Whoever keeps showing up every day. At 8:03, the front doors opened again. This time Richard Hale stepped out surrounded not by assistants, but by attorneys. His tie was gone. His shirt collar sat open and uneven. Cameras surged forward. Questions struck from every side. Did you authorize fraudulent routes? Did you retaliate against whistleblowers? Will you resign? He tried to push through with the old posture of command. Chin high, jaw set, gaze dismissive. It no longer fit him. Then he saw Maya. He stopped. For one strange second the noise around them faded. He looked at the woman he once treated as invisible and seemed unable to understand how she had become the center of the morning. Ms. Brooks, he said, voice roughened by a sleepless night. We need to speak privately. Maya did not move. You had years to speak respectfully, she answered. A murmur rippled through the press line. Richard swallowed. You do not know what people like me carry. Jace almost laughed, but Maya lifted one hand slightly, and he fell silent. She stepped closer, not aggressive, not fearful, simply steady. People like you, she said. You mean people who had choices? Richard's eyes flickered. No answer came. Sam approached with 2 agents behind him. Mr. Hale, we need you back upstairs. Richard looked from the agents to Maya, then up at the tower bearing his name. Morning sun had fully risen now, lighting every pane of glass. Nothing was hidden anymore. He straightened automatically, the reflex of a man who had practiced control his entire life. Then the posture failed. He lowered his head and followed them inside. The doors closed softly behind him. Around the plaza, phones kept recording, reporters kept talking, markets kept reacting. But for Maya, the loudest sound was something far quieter. It was the first clear breath she had taken in years. Jace handed her a fresh coffee from the cart. So, he said, what are you going to do now? Maya wrapped both hands around the warm cup and watched the company logo high above them begin to come down as maintenance crews unscrewed the first metal letter. By noon, the first metal letter of the old company sign lay on the sidewalk wrapped in moving blankets. Workers in orange vests unbolted the rest one piece at a time, while cameras kept filming from across the street. The tower looked strangely naked without its name. Glass still reached into the sky. Marble still gleamed in the lobby. But everyone knew buildings borrowed power from people, and people had started walking away. Maya Brooks stood inside the cafe where she had carried trays for 3 years. The room smelled of espresso, toasted bread, and fresh paint from a rushed overnight remodel. Corporate branding had already been removed from menus. Screens that once looped polished advertisements now displayed a plain message: temporary management transition. The words were neat and careful, the kind people used when collapse needed softer clothing. She tied on an apron for what she assumed would be the last time. Habit moved faster than destiny. "You are really still working?" asked Elena from the pastry counter. She had worked mornings for 12 years and knew every regular by coffee order and mood. "I do not know what else to do with my hands," Maya said. Elena snorted softly. "Maybe count the ways you changed this city before breakfast." Maya smiled despite herself. The doors opened. Instead of executives in expensive shoes, reporters drifted in for coffee, delivery drivers came to watch history, and former employees returned just to stand where they once felt small. They did not speak loudly. They spoke like people in a church after a storm. Around 12:20, Sam entered carrying a stack of folders. He looked tired in the honest way of men who had earned it. "You are impossible to find when there is work to celebrate," he said. "I was not celebrating," Maya replied, handing him black coffee without asking. "I was steaming milk." He accepted the cup. "Then steam this too." He slid one folder toward her. Inside was a typed statement requesting her cooperation as a formal witness. Another folder contained employee affidavits from across 3 states. Her name appeared in several of them, not because people knew her personally, but because her decision had given them courage to sign theirs. Maya turned pages slowly. Warehouse clerks, route coordinators, night janitors, single parents, men nearing retirement, women who had been ignored until they stopped trying. "They were waiting for someone else to go first," Sam said. "Turns out that someone was a server from the lobby cafe." Maya closed the folder. "I was scared." "Good," Sam answered. "Brave people usually are." The front door opened again, and conversation thinned into silence. Richard Hale entered without attorneys, without assistants, without the practiced shield of an entourage. He wore a plain navy coat over yesterday's wrinkled shirt. No tie, no polish, just a man who suddenly looked his age. 2 agents remained outside, but did not follow him in. He scanned the room until he found Maya. Several customers stiffened. Elena crossed her arms. Jace Ryder, seated near the window with untouched pie, rose halfway from his chair. Maya lifted one hand slightly. "Sit." He sat. Richard approached the counter alone. "May I speak with you?" he asked. The tone startled everyone more than shouting would have. Maya considered him. "You may stand there and speak." He nodded once, accepting terms that would have offended him 24 hours earlier. "I came to apologize." No one moved. Even the espresso machine seemed quieter. Richard glanced down at the polished wood counter, then back up. "Yesterday I treated you as if kindness from you was a threat and dignity for you was optional. That was wrong." He swallowed hard. "Not only yesterday." Maya studied him carefully. Some apologies were strategy wearing softer shoes. Others arrived late, but real. "Why now?" she asked. Richard looked toward the windows where crews continued removing letters from the tower. "Because when everything was stripped away this morning, I could still hear my own voice." The room remained silent. He continued. "I built success by measuring numbers and mistook that for worth. I forgot the people who made those numbers possible. I forgot how to see anyone without status." He exhaled. "And then the only person who showed grace was the person I dismissed." Jace watched from the booth, expression unreadable. Elena quietly stopped pretending to polish cups. Richard reached into his coat pocket and placed a small envelope on the counter. "This is not a settlement. It is a resignation letter to the board and a recommendation that all employee restitution funds begin with lowest wage staff first. You may give it to Sam if you choose." Maya did not touch it. "Why give it to me?" "Because for the first time in my career," Richard said, I would like the right person to decide where something goes. The sentence hung in the warm cafe air. Maya remembered the lobby laughter, the command in his voice, the way power once filled rooms before he entered them. Now humility stood where arrogance had been, awkward and untrained. She also remembered rent due next week, medicine costs, years of being unseen. Forgiveness was not forgetting. Mercy was not surrender. I accept the apology, she said calmly. Relief flickered across his face, then stopped when she added, but acceptance does not erase consequences. Richard nodded immediately. It should not. And I am not responsible for rebuilding what you damaged. I know. She slid the envelope to Sam, who had quietly approached beside him. Then let the process continue. Sam tucked it under his arm. It will. Richard looked at Maya one last time. You could have humiliated me publicly. Maya picked up a clean cup and set it beneath the espresso spout. You already did that yourself. A few soft laughs moved through the cafe, not cruel, just true. Richard almost smiled at the fairness of it. He straightened, thanked her under his breath, and walked back toward the door. This time he opened it for a delivery driver entering with 2 heavy milk crates. The driver blinked in confusion, then nodded and stepped inside. Small gestures looked strange on men who had never practiced them. Jace came to the counter after Richard left. You let him walk out easy. Maya shook her head. No, I let him walk out human. Outside, the final metal letter came down from the tower and touched the sidewalk with a hollow ringing sound. Rain began at 4:17 that afternoon, soft at first, tapping against the tall windows of the cafe like patient fingers. By 5 o'clock it turned steady, silver sheets sliding down the glass and blurring the city into watercolor shapes. The crowds thinned. Reporters packed cables into vans. Camera lights went dark one by one. The tower across the street stood nameless now, its bare facade washed clean by weather. Inside the cafe, the room felt smaller and warmer than it had in years. Espresso hissed. Dishes clinked softly. Someone laughed in the back. Ordinary sounds had returned, and they felt almost sacred. Maya Brooks sat alone at a corner table after closing, both hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. Steam rose in pale ribbons and disappeared near the hanging lights. She had changed out of her uniform, but still smelled faintly of coffee beans and sanitizer, the scent of long shifts and survival. For the first time in a long time, no one needed anything from her. No tray to carry, no smile to perform, no insult to swallow quietly. Just rain, warm tea, and the strange stillness that comes after a storm larger than weather. Jace Ryder stood near the front window looking out at the wet street. His riding jacket hung over a chair, revealing a plain gray thermal shirt beneath. Without the leather and patches, he looked less like a headline and more like a tired man with broad shoulders. You always watch rain like it owes you money? Maya asked. He glanced back, then smiled. No, I watch exits. She studied him. Still expecting trouble? Spent years learning that trouble arrives when rooms get too quiet. He walked over and sat across from her. The chair creaked beneath his weight. For a moment neither spoke. Rain filled the silence kindly. Maya looked at his hands resting on the table. Scarred knuckles, clean nails, steady fingers. Hands that had fixed engines, carried boxes, maybe held grief longer than comfort. Your brother, she said softly. What was his name? Jace's jaw shifted once before he answered. Daniel. He looked down at the table grain as if reading memory there. He drove long-haul routes. Knew every interstate diner from Dallas to Detroit. Could rebuild a transmission in a motel parking lot with borrowed tools and bad lighting. A small smile touched him and faded. Best man I knew. Maya waited. Some stories needed room more than questions. He kept saying the books were wrong. Jace continued. Loads marked delivered that never moved. Drivers blamed for delays they did not cause. He thought if he spoke up, someone decent upstairs would care. Rain struck harder against the window. Then one night he vanished. Jace nodded once. Truck found empty near Amarillo. No sign of him. Case went cold. Maya felt the ache inside his calmness. I am sorry. Me too. He gave a breath that was almost a laugh. Funny thing is, I spent 3 years chasing revenge and found paperwork instead. She looked at him carefully. And what did paperwork give you? The truth. He met her eyes. Turns out truth lasts longer. The cafe lights reflected softly in the glass. Outside, brake lights glowed red on the wet avenue. Elena came from the kitchen carrying a plate with 2 slices of peach pie and set it down without asking. You both look like people forgetting to eat, she said. House rule. She walked away before Thanks could catch her. Maya took a bite and closed her eyes for a second. Real butter. Cinnamon. Warm fruit. Simple kindness tasted richer after long fear. So what now? Jace asked. You going to run a revolution from table 7? Maya laughed quietly. The sound surprised her. She had not heard it enough lately. I was thinking maybe sleep first. Solid strategy. Then maybe visit my mother. Tell her why every news channel knows my face. How is she? Maya looked at the tea. Proud, probably. Worried, definitely. Mothers can multitask emotions. Jace nodded like he understood more than he said. And after that, she traced one finger along the mug rim. I do not know. I have spent so much time trying not to lose what little I had that I never planned for gaining anything. Jace leaned back. That changes tonight. He reached into the pocket of his folded jacket and placed a small key ring on the table. 1 brass key. 1 plastic tag with faded numbers. Maya frowned. What is this? My brother's garage, he said. Old service shop on the south side. Closed after he disappeared. I kept paying taxes on it because I could not let go. He slid the keys closer. It has a front office, kitchen sink that leaks, and enough dust to grow crops. Maya blinked. Why are you giving me this? Not giving. He shook his head, offering partnership. Rain softened again, turning from drumbeat to whisper. For what? She asked. A place that hires people no polished tower ever sees. Drivers too old to be trendy. Single moms needing hours that make sense. Young men one mistake away from being written off. Women who know how to run everything but never got the title. He paused. And maybe a cafe counter in the front, if you can stand coffee after all this. Maya stared at the key. It looked small enough to lose, heavy enough to change a life. You barely know me. Jace smiled gently. I know what you did when nobody was watching. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Outside, the last news van pulled away. The street grew quiet. No cameras. No witnesses. Just rainwater running along the curb. Maya picked up the key and felt its cool edges press into her palm. What would we call a place like that? She asked. Jace looked toward the nameless tower across the street, then back at her. Something honest. She stood and walked to the window. Across the avenue, maintenance workers were hanging a temporary banner where the old logo once sat. White letters on blue canvas rose slowly through the rain. She could not read them yet through the water streaks. Looks like they are naming that building again, Jace said. Maya watched the blurred banner climb and answered without turning. Maybe. But tonight, I am more interested in what gets named next. The next morning smelled like wet asphalt, fresh paint, and possibility. Sunlight pushed through the last low clouds and turned puddles into sheets of gold along the south side streets. Maya Brooks stood in front of Daniel Ryder Auto and Fleet Repair, reading the faded sign above a roll-up garage door that had not opened in years. Several letters leaned crooked. Rust traced the bolts like old tears. The windows were filmed with dust thick enough to dull the morning. Beside her, Jace held 2 coffees and a ring of keys. Still interested? He asked. Maya took 1 cup and looked at the building again. The neighborhood around them was honest in the way wealthy districts rarely were. Tire shops, laundromats, a barber pole turning lazily, a church with chipped white steps, kids on bicycles cutting through parking lots, men in work boots buying breakfast tacos from a truck on the corner. Nothing polished. Everything real. Open it, she said. The garage door groaned upward inch by inch, complaining loudly after years of silence. Dust floated in sunbeams like shaken snow. Inside sat 3 service bays, tool chests, shelves of old filters, a cracked office desk, and 1 pickup truck under a canvas cover. The air smelled of oil, rubber, and memory. Jace stood very still. He left that truck half finished. Maya said nothing. Grief sometimes needed witnesses more than words. She walked slowly across the concrete floor. Her shoes left clean tracks through dust. On one wall hung a calendar frozen 3 years back. On another, neat handwriting listed customer names and promised dates. Daniel had expected to come back tomorrow. The thought tightened the room. We start with windows, Maya said at last. Jace blinked. That is your first instinct. People trust places that let in light. He gave a rough laugh. Then I guess I trust you. By 10 o'clock, the shop was alive with brooms, rags, borrowed ladders, and neighborhood curiosity. Elena arrived carrying muffins and enough cleaning supplies to sanitize a stadium. Sam showed up in jeans with a toolbox no one asked him to bring. Two riders from the Iron Saints scrubbed grease stains from the floor while arguing over the correct way to hang shelves. A retired school custodian named Mr. Lewis wandered in after hearing they needed help and quietly fixed a broken sink trap in 15 minutes. No one was hired yet. No paperwork signed. Still, people came. Sometimes hope spreads faster than gossip. Maya stood in the tiny front office scraping old stickers from the glass door when a shadow paused outside. She looked up. Richard Hale stood on the sidewalk in plain clothes, holding a cardboard box. No cameras followed him. No lawyers trailed behind. Just a man in a box. Jace straightened from across the shop. The room tightened instantly. Richard raised one hand slightly. "I am not here to cause trouble." "That would be a change," Jace said. Maya stepped to the doorway. "What do you need?" Richard looked around the garage, taking in the laughter, the work, the open door. Something unreadable crossed his face. "Nothing," he said. "I came to return something." He set the box on the counter inside the office and stepped back. Maya opened it carefully. Inside were employee commendation cards, old tip envelopes, schedule requests, and a small metal name tag, Maya Brooks. She frowned. "Why do you have these?" Richard's jaw tightened with embarrassment. Executive storage audits often collected records before labor disputes. "We archive people like numbers." He looked directly at her. "I found your file last night. 3 raises denied. 2 transfer requests ignored. 1 recommendation for management buried because you lacked executive polish." Silence spread through the garage. Elena muttered something unkind under her breath. Richard continued anyway. "There was also this." He removed a folded paper from his coat and handed it to Maya. It was an old customer comment card from 2 years ago. In shaky handwriting, someone had written, "The young woman at the lobby cafe treated me with dignity when no one else did. Promote her." Maya stared at the signature. "Daniel Ryder." She looked up slowly at Jace. He had gone completely still. "He came through the tower often," Richard said quietly. "I never knew." Jace took the paper with careful fingers, as if it might tear under grief. "He told me once there was a woman there who looked people in the eye," he said. "I thought he was talking poetry." Maya felt tears threaten and refused them only halfway. Richard stepped back toward the sidewalk. "The board accepted my resignation at dawn," he said. "Investigations continue. Restitution funds are being set up." He hesitated. "I know I am not owed forgiveness. But if this place hires, I know logistics, contracts, vendor systems, and how bad companies hide waste. Use that however you wish." Elena nearly dropped a spray bottle. One rider barked a laugh. Jace stared at Richard as if measuring whether humiliation had finally taught him proportion. Maya folded the old comment card and placed it gently in her pocket. "You want a job here?" she asked. Richard nodded once. "Any honest one." She looked around the shop. Mr. Lewis fixing shelves. Sam sorting bolts. Riders mopping floors. Sunlight filling corners untouched for years. Then she pointed toward a stack of flattened boxes by the alley door. "Start with recycling." Richard blinked. "That is all. For today," Maya said. "Show up tomorrow if you mean it." He removed his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and carried the first load outside without another word. The garage watched him go in stunned silence. Jace exhaled slowly. "You just made a former chief executive haul cardboard." Maya picked up a paint roller and smiled. "No. I offered a man his first real promotion." At noon, the new sign design arrived by email from a neighborhood print shop. Maya opened the file, and everyone crowded around the office computer. Bold blue letters on white background. 110 South Community Garage and Cafe. Beneath it, in smaller script, "Dignity served daily." 3 weeks later, the line reached the sidewalk before sunrise. Men in steel-toe boots stood beside mothers holding toddlers on their hips. A teenager in a wrinkled button-down rehearsed answers under his breath. A retired mechanic carried a folder of certifications from 1989. 2 women from the old warehouse came together, shoulders squared like they were done asking permission from the world. Above them all, the new sign caught the morning light. 110 South Community Garage and Cafe. Beneath it, the smaller words had become something. People repeated to each other like a promise. "Dignity served daily." Inside, the smell of cinnamon rolls mixed with motor oil, fresh paint, and coffee strong enough to wake grief itself. Maya Brooks moved behind the cafe counter with the speed of long practice, sliding cups down the polished surface while calling names and smiling without forcing it. The front office windows stood wide open. Sunlight entered every room. Jace Ryder stood in Bay 2 teaching a young apprentice how to listen to an engine instead of just hearing it. "Machines talk," he said. "Most people are too proud to listen." The apprentice nodded seriously and then nearly dropped a wrench. Laughter rolled through the shop. It was the good kind, the kind that lifts instead of cuts. Richard Hale arrived at 6:55 wearing work gloves and carrying a stack of flattened boxes from the alley recycler. He had shown up every morning since the day Maya handed him cardboard duty. First early, then earlier. He swept floors without being asked, learned inventory labels, burned his hand on hot coffee because he insisted on pouring for others before himself. No cameras ever came with him. No speeches did either. Elena still called him sir whenever she wanted to annoy him. Today she pointed toward the mop bucket. Executive leadership needs refilling. Richard nodded and obeyed. Humility looked less awkward on him now. Maya noticed the line outside stretching longer. "We need another table for applications," she called. Richard set down the mop handle immediately. On it, he moved fast, carrying folding tables from storage and wiping each one clean. The old instinct to command had been replaced by something quieter and far rarer: usefulness. By 8 o'clock, every chair was full. Sam sat in the front office reviewing resumes beside Mr. Lewis, who had somehow become head of practical wisdom. "Can you arrive on time?" he asked one applicant. "Yes, sir." "Good. Because talent sleeps in. Character gets here by 7. Across the room, a woman named Carla cried softly after receiving a schedule that allowed her to pick up her son from school. A former driver with a cane laughed when Jace hired him as dispatcher. After hearing he knew every back road in 3 counties. "I told you retirement was boring," Jace said. The man wiped his eyes and muttered, "I hate you for being right." Around noon, a black SUV pulled to the curb. 2 members of the new Meridian Oversight Board stepped out in tailored coats, blinking at the crowd and the busy shop. They entered carefully, as if expecting hostility. Instead, they found children eating grilled cheese at corner tables while mechanics explained brake pads to customers. One board member, a silver-haired woman named Donna Mercer, approached Maya. "Ms. Brooks." "Yes, ma'am." Donna extended a hand. "I am here on behalf of Meridian Holdings. We would like to discuss a formal partnership. Fleet maintenance contracts, food service catering, community workforce placement." She glanced around the room, impressed despite herself. "Frankly, our analysts cannot understand how you rebuilt trust faster than corporations with 10,000 employees." Maya dried her hands on a towel. "We started by telling the truth and feeding people lunch." Donna laughed once, surprised into honesty. "Would you consider consulting for us?" Before Maya could answer, Richard spoke from behind the counter where he was stocking lids. "You should offer her a board seat." The room went still for one beat. Donna turned, startled to see him in an apron that read, "Ask me about today's PIE." Richard continued calmly. "You need someone who understands operations, labor morale, customer experience, crisis response, and ethics under pressure." She demonstrated all 5 in one afternoon. Maya stared at him. So did everyone else. Donna looked from Richard to Maya and back again. "He may be right," she said slowly. Elena nearly choked on a biscuit. Maya folded the towel once. "I appreciate that," she said. "But I am busy." A ripple of laughter moved through the cafe. Donna smiled. "Then let me simplify it. Name your terms." Maya looked around the room. Jace teaching a teenager torque settings. Carla filling out health insurance forms with shaking hands. Mr. Lewis correcting grammar on an application. Richard carrying coffee to people who once feared men like him. This place was not an accident. It was architecture built from respect. "My terms are simple," Maya said. "Living wages. Internal promotion tracks. Child care support where possible. Anonymous reporting that actually protects workers. And no one in management gets to use the word hierarchy like it is holy scripture." Donna blinked, then smiled wider. "Done, pending legal review." Richard quietly added, "Do it first. Review later." Donna laughed. "You truly have changed." "No," he said, glancing at Maya. "I was changed." The meeting lasted 15 minutes. By the end, 110 South had secured more work than the garage could handle alone. Expansion would be necessary. New hires. More bays. Another cafe line. Maybe a second location someday. When Donna left, the crowd outside applauded for reasons they only partly understood. News traveled quickly in neighborhoods used to waiting. Jace leaned on the counter beside Maya. You know this means we are going to be busy for years. She smiled. Good. He lowered his voice. And if I ask whether you ever take days off? She gave him a sideways glance. Depends who is asking. Man who owns one decent motorcycle and finally learned patience. Elena slammed a tray down between them. Take your flirting outside and wash windows while you are at it. Jace raised both hands. Maya laughed so hard she had to steady herself on the counter. Through the open front door, sunlight poured across the floor where people kept coming in. 6 months later, the sunrise found no empty parking spaces on South Mason Street. Delivery vans lined one curb. Customer pickups lined the other. A second building next door, once abandoned and boarded shut, now wore fresh white paint and blue trim. Children waiting for school buses pressed their noses to the glass to watch mechanics roll open service bays like theater curtains. The sign above both storefronts stretched wider now. 110 South Community Garage and Cafe. The smaller words beneath it had been polished, so often they almost glowed. Dignity served daily. Inside, the morning rhythm moved like music people had practiced together for years. Espresso steamed. Wrenches clicked. Printers hummed. Someone laughed. In Bay 3, someone cried happy tears in the office after getting hired. The place no longer felt like a business. It felt like proof. Maya Brooks stood at the front counter reviewing payroll reports while sipping coffee gone lukewarm 15 minutes earlier. She wore a navy work shirt with her name stitched above the pocket and no trace of apology in her posture. Through the open office door, she could see Richard Hale training 2 new managers on scheduling software. He spoke softly now, listened more than he talked, and asked questions before giving answers. Growth can happen in silence when pride finally gets tired. Jace Ryder entered carrying a tray of breakfast tacos, and the morning mail balanced on one forearm. You skipped breakfast again, he said. That is slander. Then explain why your coffee is eating alone. He set a taco beside her ledger and leaned down just enough to lower his voice. I also fixed the squeak in the front door. You mean the squeak I liked because it warned me you were coming? He smiled. Then I made a terrible mistake. Their ease with each other had become part of the building's architecture. Nothing dramatic. Nothing forced. Just 2 people who had learned trust in work clothes. Elena rang a spoon against a mug from the cafe side. If you 2 are finished writing poetry with eye contact, table 4 needs syrup. Laughter rolled through the room. At 9:10, a black sedan stopped across the street. Not threatening. Not flashy. Simply expensive in a way that expected doors to open themselves. The driver stepped out first, then held the rear door. A man in his late 60s emerged wearing a tailored charcoal coat and carrying a cane more decorative than necessary. Heads turned instinctively. People recognized wealth even when it tried to whisper. He entered slowly, surveying the room with sharp blue eyes that missed little. Good morning, Maya said. Welcome to 110 South. Table or service appointment? The man looked at her for a long second. Neither. I am Harold Whitmore. The name moved through the room like current. Founder of Whitmore Capital. Investor in half the downtown skyline. Board chairman of the restructured Meridian Group. Richard looked up from the office and went pale for reasons only former executives understand. Harold continued. I was told if I wanted to see how culture is rebuilt, I should come here before 10. Maya nodded once. Then someone gave good directions. A faint smile touched the old man. May we speak privately? She gestured to the front office. You may speak in there. Privately depends on your volume. Even Harold chuckled at that. In the office, sunlight crossed shelves stacked with payroll binders and break catalogs. No luxury. No intimidation. Just usefulness. Harold sat opposite Maya and set his cane aside. I have spent 40 years acquiring companies, he said. Do you know what I almost never found? Parking, she asked. He laughed more openly this time. Leaders who understand people before spreadsheets. He slid a leather folder across the desk. Inside were expansion proposals, community grant offers, apprenticeship funding, and a formal invitation to join the Meridian Oversight Board as independent labor and ethics director. The compensation number alone could have paid her mother's rent for years. Maya read quietly, then closed the folder. That is generous. It is strategic, Harold corrected. You create loyalty faster than money can buy it. She looked through the glass at the floor outside. Richard coaching a teenager through scheduling errors without condescension. Jace helping a child tie a shoelace while carrying tools. Elena slipping extra fries to a tired nurse in scrubs. Then you still misunderstand what happened here, Maya said. Harold leaned back. Explain it to me. Loyalty was never bought, she answered. It was respected into existence. The old man became very still. Some people hear truth, so rarely it sounds expensive. Will you accept? He asked at last. Maya smiled gently and slid the folder back. I will accept partnership contracts, apprenticeship funds, and fair fleet rates. I will not leave this place to supervise men in towers who need reminders to be decent. Harold studied her, then nodded slowly. That may be the wisest refusal I have received. When they returned to the main floor, everyone pretended not to stare and failed badly. Harold walked directly to Richard. Mr. Hale. Richard straightened instinctively. Sir. Harold glanced around the shop. You lost a corporation and found your usefulness. Rare trade. Richard lowered his eyes once. Yes, sir. Harold turned to the room at large. For the record, Whitmore Capital will be funding expansion here effective immediately. Cheers erupted from every bay. Elena cried out loud enough to shake cups. Mr. Lewis removed his hat. Jace looked at Maya with quiet pride that needed no witness. Harold took his cane and headed for the door. Before leaving, he paused beside Maya. One more thing. Yes, sir. That phrase on your sign. He nodded upward. Keep it. This city needs reading material. Then he left. The day rushed forward in 100 directions after that. Phones rang. Orders came in. Hires were made. Engines started. Coffee poured. But near sunset, when the last customer departed and golden light stretched long across the concrete floor, Maya stepped outside alone for a moment. The street was calm. Warm wind moved the small blue banner tied near the signpost. Behind her, laughter drifted from the cafe. Tools clinked faintly. Someone was singing badly in Bay 2. She placed one hand on the doorframe that had once squeaked. Across town, towers still caught the sun. Here, the light touched grease stains, coffee cups, open hands, and honest work. Jace came to stand beside her without speaking. Their shoulders nearly touched. Neither hurried to fill the silence. Cars passed. Leaves moved. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. Maya looked at the glowing sign, then at the people inside, and breathed in slowly. Some doors closed with noise. The best ones opened quietly.